welcome to 5 Things to Know, a Tax Talk Today exclusive. I'm joined today by Jared Ballew, Chair of the IRS Electronic Tax Administration Advisory Committee, or ETAAC. Jared holds an MBA from East Carolina University and has a distinguished career in the tax industry with Drake Software. He currently serves as the VP of Government Relations at Taxwell. He also serves as president of the National Association of Computerized Tax Processors, where he promotes standardization and simplification between government tax agencies and tax processing industry. He is also actively engaged in the Council for Electronic Revenue Communications Advancement, or CIRCA, and the Security Summit, serving as a co-lead for the Tax Pro Working Group. Jared, on behalf of our viewers, it's my pleasure to welcome you to Tax Talk today, where IRS representatives and tax industry leaders come together to share their knowledge and experiences working in federal tax law. As a career tax practitioner and an industry advocate, I know as well as anyone the importance of our community providing feedback to the IRS. I would like to ask a bit more about the important role of ETAAC in providing the IRS critical and timely information. First, again, welcome, Jared. It's great to have you on the show. Can you tell us a little bit about your roles and experiences working with ETAAC, the NPL, or National Practitioner Liaison, and the Security Summit?
Absolutely. Thank you, Alan, for having me on today. It's great to be here. You know, my work with both ETAAC, NPL, and Security Summit have gone back a ways. I would start with the NPL, or National Public Liaison. I can remember first joining the calls with Mel Hardy and NPL crew, listening to all the professionals, right, that would bring in their issues, their topics. They would interact with the government or the IRS. And, you know, that was really one of my first places that I started getting to interact with people. The Security Summit as well, you know, I joined over 5 years ago into the Security Summit and worked my way into the Tax Pro Working Group and became the co-lead to help lead and bridge the gap between, you know, the software developer side of it, tax professionals, and security. And, you know, when I was at these two groups, both NPL and the Security Summit and the Tax Pro Working Group, and even some of the other Security Summit groups, I would see ETAAC members join. They would be on the calls, they'd be listening, they'd be engaging. And, you know, they always were talking about some of the latest and greatest issues and how they were going to solve them and bringing their perspective. And it interested me ultimately in applying for the group. And that's really where it started, I guess, 3 years ago when I applied and was accepted to be a part of the ETAAC. And again, ETAAC is the Electronic Tax Administration Advisory Committee. It is an advisory committee. And I think that the beauty of it is that it does bring together the best in tax administration to talk about the topics that are important.
You know, the Security Summit pops into my head now. I'm thinking about this, and if I'm understanding correctly, and you please feel free to tell me I'm incorrect here, but we are all required to have a written security plan as part when we sign up for PTIN. And if I'm remembering, I believe that you're going to be at the tax forums this year talking about such a plan. Is that fair?
You are correct. Yeah, absolutely. So the Written Information Security Plan, it's actually comes out of the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, which the FTC was charged with regulating. And they say that tax practitioners are considered financial institutions. And as such, you are required to have a written information security plan in your office. And so in the summit, we had the Tax Pro Working Group. And one of the issues we saw that got brought up was, you know, what does one look like? How do I comply? Do I need one? You know, how long or in depth should it be? And there really weren't a lot of great examples. You know, some of the software companies or trade associations were making things for their members, but there really was no standard. There was no floor. And that's really what the Security Summit's about, is making sure that we bring standards up equally and fair to all. And so in that work group, we developed what we know today as Pub 5708, or the Written Information Security Plan for Tax and Accounting Practices. And it really is just basically the baseline for what you need in your office to be able to comply with the FTC guidelines as a financial institution. And it gives you some really good information, definitions, but ultimately a template. Right? This is what one looks like. And you could actually take that template and do some filling in of your office information and begin working on building out that plan. So yes, this summer I'll be at all the IRS forums. And it's an early bird special. We decided to do something new. NPL came to me and said, hey, let's rethink things. And so at 6:45 at every forum till 7:45 on Wednesday morning, I will be presenting, and ultimately it's a workshop, right? I'm going to talk about it a little bit, but I want to know about practitioners. I want them to be able to feel safe to bring their office and the real life examples to me where I can help them. There is no CPE for the class. We did that on purpose because we want to be able to spend time with you, the tax professional. We want to be able to go over your plans, answer your questions, and really dig into your office personally, where in a safe, secure environment. So yeah, we're excited to have that. I'm excited to be there, and hopefully I can meet many practitioners throughout the summer.
Well, I'll be there. I'll be looking for you as well. So
Absolutely.
I'm sorry I got off track there, but I thought it was important to bring that up since we did talk about the summit here. Let's get back onto ETAAC now. Can you tell us how ETAAC's evolved over the years and the importance of the tax professional involvement in the committee?
Absolutely. So the ETAAC was originally chartered back in 1998, the Restructuring Act. And it was originally charged with improving electronic tax administration. And the reason that is the e-filing rates were well under 80% of the total returns filed. And so they needed to find a way, Congress needed to find a way, IRS needed to find a way to be able to raise those numbers. ETAAC was formed to help find solutions to the technology problems that stood in the way. And so over the years, we've been able to bring those numbers up. I'm happy to report this year that we are well over 95% electronically filed returns for income tax returns, which is fantastic, but it doesn't mean our job's done. It actually means that we need to be able to rethink and find ways to bridge the gap on those that still can't file or choose not to file. But ultimately, what are the tools and technologies for those that do file paper returns? Can we digitally ingest them? How can we make the tools and services for the returns that are filed electronically available with better access to them for taxpayers, to tax professionals? So ultimately, our job is kind of never ending there. But we were also additionally charged when the Security Summit was formed to start identifying how we can improve fighting fraud, tax refund fraud, identity theft, and so an overall security hygiene. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we do also work in the Security Summit to protect against those cyber threats. So kind of electronic filing, tax administration improvements, and identity theft, tax refund fraud prevention.
I understand that ETAAC recently released its public report for this, I guess, season, for lack of a better term.
Absolutely.
What is the public report, and can you give us some top highlights?
So we're really excited. This week, we did release the public report to Congress, and so that's something that's unique about our group, is that we are a congressional group. We are a congressional committee. We do make our recommendations to Congress, but we also do that to the IRS as well. You know, this year we did something a little bit different. If you've looked at prior ETAAC reports, what you can do on irs.gov, you can go to ETAAC and look at all the different years and all the different recommendations from past. We decided to take a little bit different approach. You see, ETAAC is made up of many different stakeholders, and I'll get into those in a minute, but those stakeholders represent tax administrators. What you think about is there's tax policy. Tax policy is generally your legislatures, whether it be federal or state. That would be your Treasury Department. And then, you know, on the other side of the spectrum, you have things called voluntary tax compliance, right? And that's what legislators are trying to gain, is voluntary tax compliance. But in that middle, right between it, we have tax administrators. We are responsible for translating tax policy into voluntary tax compliance. And why is that important? Well, what we understood is that there are many stakeholders. So we as an ETAAC should sit down and we should engage more than just those that are on the committee. And so we sent out surveys and questions to all the stakeholder groups, whether it be software or practitioner. And we asked for some feedback, and they were able to kind of give us their priority lists. We took those priorities and we kind of set them down. And then I commissioned my committee to sit there and think as a taxpayer. I said, put down your backgrounds and experiences, whether it's a professional, whether it's a software developer, or a state Department of Revenue. And I said, think about it as a taxpayer. they only interact with the government one time a year. And most often the journey or the filing experience is relatively smooth. They file 2 to 3 weeks later, they get their refund and they're done. They don't think about taxes again. But what about those where their journey is disrupted? And what we've seen is that when their journey is disrupted, that it can be months, it can be years, and it's very frustrating and painful. And so we wanted to look at the report a little bit differently, and how can we improve service delivery to taxpayers to eliminate or reduce the friction points or the fallout of taxpayers going off the happy path. And the reason we did that is tax policy and tax compliance, those are emotional words. There's an emotion built into filing a tax return, whether you believe it or not. There really is an emotion. It's the same, if you go to your physician, people don't want to disclose too much to anyone else. They trust their physician, they'll talk to their physician. Same with tax practitioners. It's a very sensitive topic, and they put a lot of faith and trust in it, because whether they have angst, they're uncertain, it's something that's above their head, or they're, maybe they have a fear of the government. That's why they go to you. And over 55% of taxpayers go to a tax practitioner. And even more so when you think about DIY filers, if they run into any issue, they get a letter, well, they're going to go to probably a tax practitioner to help them resolve that letter. So the job of the tax pro is very important, and we need to be sensitive to why taxpayers actually care. Why I say that is we began to build these ideas, and we wanted to say, how do we begin to flesh out what's a good idea in tax administration? How do we set a proving ground for developing new models and new systems and new services and applications? How do we have a proving ground for practitioner offices and how they meet taxpayer needs or customer needs? And so we came up with a model. If you'll reference it, it's on our report on page 12, and we came up with what we call the taxpayer trust model. And the goal of this model, again, is to simply state that voluntary tax compliance is the core of tax administration in the United States tax system. Taxpayers have to trust who they are working with in order to file. And so if you look at the bottom, it's really, we take it at tax policy, so that, again, it's coming from your government who is issuing the revenue code, which we believe is well over 3.8 million words of Title 26. And what you have to do to be successful in translating that as a tax administrator is you have to set your foundation. One, you have to have guidance. So that guidance has to come out and has to be clear, accurate, and timely, right? We need this out well in advance of a tax season. When you get guidance halfway through a filing season, there's running a risk of taxpayers not complying or missing the mark. Communication. We have to be able to communicate this to our practitioners, to our taxpayers, to our software developers, and education. Building training models for taxpayers that are looking for assistance, for tax pros that are looking for assistance. Again, we have to have all three together. You can't just have one without the other. And it creates really this nice foundation for you to begin to say, before we start building out the model, you have to have these core principles. Now, the pillars that we have there, those are service delivery channels, right? If you think about it that way. Often you're going to hear in the news, or you'll hear it from politicians, you'll hear it all over the places. We just need to make sure taxpayers have a choice. And fundamentally, ETAAC agrees with that. We think taxpayers do need choices in how they want to file their tax returns. However, choice alone does not foster trust, right? You have to have these other core functions or services available. That's access. Can they even get to what the choice you've made available? Are you being transparent in how you're delivering that service and how you're interacting with the taxpayer? And then ultimately, are you securing the data that the taxpayer entrusts to you? So without one of these pillars, the roof will collapse, right? Just one. You have to respect all four pillars, because if you violate them, again, you violate the taxpayer's trust, ultimately damaging voluntary tax compliance, which, some may call the tax gap, some may call other things, but ultimately that is, in our mind, how you bridge the gap between tax policy and voluntary tax compliance. And you can run many different things through this model. What we like to think of this is, even if you had something go wrong in your business or something happened, and well, why did it happen? Why were my taxpayers reacting this way? Why did taxpayers not do this? Well, we encourage you, run it through the model, see if you violated either a foundational item or a pillar that supports the trust. And so that's kind of the foundation of our report. All of our 26 recommendations that we made, while that seems like a lot, they were very pointed in the taxpayer journey. What we did, again, they flow as the taxpayer interacts. So you're going to start off with information reporting and payroll services. That's where the taxpayer generally begins their journey. Even if they don't know it, that's where their information starts getting reported to the government that builds the base for their information documents. And then we went on into filing a tax return. So those recommendations will follow. And then we talk about business system modernization, human capital modernization, and the things that the IRS can do internally to begin to develop and foster trust in the American taxpayer. So that's kind of the structure of the report, but ultimately every recommendation has been run through this model. And so we believe they're very sound and can ultimately impact and affect positively the taxpayer's experience moving forward, and hopefully help those out there that are looking to build or integrate or grow their business. So this model is good for Congress, to the tax practitioner, and everywhere in between.
Well, this is great, Jared. You've given us so much information in a short period of time. We do appreciate it. Any last words of encouragement or advice?
Oh, absolutely. A couple of things is, I would tell you, your voice matters. As a tax pro, we need to hear from you. Your congressman needs to hear from you. The IRS needs to hear from you. Groups like this, your trade associations need to hear from you. You represent a very wide swath of taxpayers. They put their trust in you. And because they put your trust in you, it is your duty to make sure that you're educated, that you're taking all the steps that you need to learn about the new tax law changes, making sure that you take the steps to be secure with taxpayer data. And then ultimately, I think my last comment would be, we'd love to have you on the ETAAC. If you're interested in that, we'd love to hear from you. If you don't necessarily want to contribute or spend time or have the ability to do so, then reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you and your ideas, and we're trying our best to incorporate those and move forward. So there's a lot of opportunities to engage, whether you want to actually participate in the committee or at least contribute ideas and key issues for the future.
Jared, this has been really great. Thank you so much for joining us on 5 Things to Know. On behalf of our viewers, I want to thank you for your service in tax, especially your current role with ETAAC. Your work really benefits the IRS, Congress, the tax preparer community, and our nation's taxpayers. Thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you again on another Tax Talk Today program. Both Jared and I will be speaking at the IRS tax forums this year, and we look forward to meeting all of you there. So please feel free to step up, say hi, introduce yourself, and be happy to have a conversation, maybe answer a question that we weren't able to get on today's program. I'd like to thank you all for watching, and as always, it's been great learning with you. Be sure to join us again on an upcoming Tax Talk Today program.